Welcome, my dear. Huh. They thought they were clever. They thought the brain was a puzzle, a little lockbox with numbers and code words. But yours? Yours was a labyrinth where screams echo in reverse, where silence has a name and shadows beg for light that never comes. They didn't send a soldier, a spy, or a killer. No, they sent a mind reader, the last desperate hand of cowards trying to peek through a door they were never meant to open. He touched your thoughts like a curious child touches fire, without understanding, without respect, and when it burned him, oh, how he shrieked. But you didn't flinch, because your mind isn't a sanctuary, it's a graveyard, and every idea is buried with nails through its eyes. He came in, confident. He thought he'd navigate your memories like a tourist with a flashlight. But flashlights don't work in catacombs, and tourists don't survive ancient curses. He found the first layer, the betrayal, the screams, the quiet moments. You wished someone would just ask, "Are you okay?" But nobody did. He saw the hands that hurt you, the ones that fed you poison dressed as praise. He saw the masks people wore when they smiled at you, how their eyes stayed cold while their words felt warm. And still, he kept going, deeper, stupidly brave, or arrogantly suicidal. He thought he was mapping trauma. What he didn't realize was that the deeper he went, the less of him came back. Because your mind doesn't contain chaos, it feeds on it. He tried to label your pain, as if giving it a name would tame it, as if cataloging your scars would somehow disinfect them. But some wounds don't want to heal. Some pain grows roots, becomes soil for a different kind of flower, the kind that drinks rage like rain and blossoms into vengeance. He saw that bloom. He saw what you've become. Not broken, not damaged, not a victim. No, something else, something worse, something unreadable. You see, they thought if they could read your mind, they could control you. Silly. They thought they'd find a plan, a motive, a reason. But your past reasons, you're a response, a mirror made of razors, a consequence wrapped in human skin. He looked for blueprints, but all he found were blue flames. Thought he'd find secrets. Instead, he found storms. Because your brain isn't made of neurons and thoughts. It's a maze of locked doors, each one hiding a version of you that never got to speak. And when he opened those doors, they didn't whisper. They screamed. They demanded. They cried out for retribution, for justice, for blood. And in that moment, when the echoes of your past roared through him, something inside him cracked. He didn't find you. He lost himself. But isn't that poetic? They tried to understand you, so they sent someone to be inside your mind. And now, he's stuck there, sitting in a corner of your subconscious, rocking back and forth, mumbling names he doesn't recognize anymore. The mind reader became the inmate. And you stayed quiet, watching, letting the silence stretch like a blade. And what did he see in your brain that broke him? He saw how many times you swallowed rage just to keep the peace, how many times you held back a scream to not make them uncomfortable. He saw the lies they fed you with sugar-coated guilt, the manipulation, the isolation, the fake apologies stitched with self-interest. He saw the moment you stopped crying and started calculating, the day you buried your innocence and started building your revenge, brick by brick, thought by thought, smile by bloody smile. He watched it all unfold like a movie with no heroes, only survivors. And he couldn't look away when he saw you, sitting calmly at the center of it all, untouched, unfazed, patiently waiting. Not for justice, not for karma, but for opportunity. Because people like you don't scream for revenge. You design it with patience, precision, elegance. You don't stab in the dark. You sharpen the knife until the reflection shows them their guilt, their cowardice, their hypocrisy. And then you let them bleed on their own lies. They thought your mind was a weakness, but they forgot. A mind that's endured madness doesn't fear monsters. It breeds them. And now, you are what haunts the darkness. He thought he'd find a scared little soul begging to be fixed. Instead, he found a kingdom ruled by silence, guarded by pain, crowned in fire. He tried to retreat. Oh yes, he tried. But retreat requires clarity, and clarity requires courage. And courage doesn't grow in places like yours. Not anymore. Your thoughts are a web of sharp edges, each memory wrapped in barbed wire, each smile soaked in venom. He thought you were chaotic, but he was wrong. You're not chaos. You're the architect of it. He didn't just read your mind. He entered it. And now, he's a part of it, trapped, just like the others, just like the voices who thought they could control you, just like the faces who thought they could break you. He'll sit there now, forever, just another ghost screaming behind your eyes. And you move forward, calm, calculated, unshaken. Because this wasn't the first time someone tried to invade your peace, and it won't be the last. But this time, they sent someone who thought understanding you was the same as controlling you. Fools. They didn't realize understanding you only amplifies the terror. Because knowledge is only power when it doesn't terrify the wielder. You walked away, unbothered. Because why would a storm worry about those drowning in its flood? You don't chase validation. You don't crave pity. You don't even seek revenge like others do. No, your revenge exists. It breathes. It walks. It smiles in silence while others scream in confusion. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's simply inevitable. And now they'll ask, what did he see in there? But no one will believe the answer. Because the truth is too heavy, too dark, too twisted to put in words. So they'll invent lies. They'll say he was unstable. They'll say he cracked under pressure, that he imagined things. But you'll know the truth. He saw you, the real you, the one they tried to silence, cage, tame, and failed. And the worst part? You're not done yet. He saw you. The real you. The one they tried to silence, cage, tame, and failed. And the worst part? You're not done yet. Because this was never about ending them quickly. It was about watching them dissolve slowly in the acid of their own intentions. The mind reader didn't just lose his grip on sanity. He cracked open the vault and let something else out. Something ancient. Something you locked away long ago, not because it was dangerous, but because the world wasn't ready for it. And now that it's free, there's no stuffing it back into the dark. The light stings it. The noise annoys it. But the chaos? Oh, it feeds on that. It grows teeth in turmoil and claws in betrayal. And what they don't understand is this. You're not trying to rebuild who you were. That version was naive, polished, predictable. You let them kill that self, and thanked them for doing the job you never had the strength to finish. Because the person that stands now is not some phoenix born from fire. It is the fire, moving with purpose, burning only what dares to stand in its way. You don't react anymore. You design. You architect the collapse of masks. You engineer silence where noise used to mock you. They still think this is personal, like this is about revenge for what they did. How small-minded, how utterly laughable. This isn't about what happened. It's about what's coming. You don't care about their regret, their tears, or their apologies drafted with trembling fingers. Let them beg. Let them bleed. Let them build temples out of excuses. You'll never step inside, because you've outgrown the need for closure. You don't need answers when you are the consequence. That mind reader, he was just a spark. He lit the fuse. Now the entire system is shaking, and they don't even know why. They feel it, the change in the air, the way your presence doesn't ask permission anymore. You walk into rooms and oxygen leaves. You speak, and their lies begin to shiver. Not because you expose them, but because you don't have to. Truth now walks beside you like a weapon no one can steal. They keep glancing at each other now, don't they? Whispering behind curtains they once used to stand in front of. The confidence that once decorated their faces is now flaking off like cheap paint. They ask questions in hushed tones. What did he see? What did she do? How much does he know? But the real question is one they're too afraid to ask out loud. What comes next? Because they thought knowing your story gave them leverage. They thought mapping your past meant they could predict your moves. But the truth is, you're not a narrative. They can't read you like a book because you keep rewriting yourself mid-sentence. One day you're fire. The next, you're ice. One moment you vanish. The next, you're everywhere. That's the horror they're now choking on. You are ungraspable. And anything they can't grasp, they try to destroy. But how do you kill something that's already been through death and came back with no soul to lose? You walk differently now, not with arrogance, but with absolution. You've made peace with the abyss inside you. You've stopped resisting it. Now, it walks in sync with your steps. No conflict, no duality, just harmony in darkness. That's what he saw when he entered your thoughts, the terrifying stillness of someone who no longer seeks justice, but balance. And that balance doesn't require fairness. It demands sacrifice. They underestimated your transformation. They thought you'd roar back with fury, but you returned silent. And silence, my dear, kills slower. It unsettles. It festers. Because when you scream, they know where you are. But when you're silent, they start losing track of what's real. They're watching everything now. Paranoia, licking their necks like a slow flame. Every text you don't send, every call you don't return, every stare you don't break, it's psychological warfare they never trained for. You've become a ghost with flesh. And ghosts don't need revenge. They just remind, every day, every hour, of what was done and what's coming. The mind reader? He's not the only casualty. He was just the first to knock on the door. Now the others, those who built your downfall brick by brick, with their lies, with their manipulation, with their pretty little speeches dipped in poison, they're starting to feel the weight too. But not in the ways they expect. Not in screams or confrontations. No, you're more refined than that. You make their friends question them. You leave silence in places where laughter used to echo. You withdraw, not as weakness, but as a storm gathering strength. You've become the question mark in their routine, the shadow in their memory, the thing that doesn't speak, but doesn't go away. And yet, amid all this, You're not angry anymore. That's the most frightening part. You've replaced rage with purpose. You've stopped wasting fire on those who will never understand warmth. Now you burn only what fuels your future. You don't seek to punish them with pain. No, you punish them with your evolution. Because nothing haunts the wicked more than the sight of the one they broke, walking like royalty through the ruins. They still whisper your name, hoping it doesn't summon you, but it does. Every time they speak it, you grow stronger. Because names have power, and yours is now etched in their fear. Not because you demand obedience, but because your existence is proof that some people can't be caged, tamed, or read like weak minds on a therapist's couch. And yet, they'll try again. They always do. Because people like them live under the illusion that they matter more than they do. That they can still handle you. That they can still send someone else into your mind, hoping this one will return with answers. But they forget. You're not a riddle. You're a reflection. And every time they try to decode you, they see parts of themselves they're too terrified to admit exist. Now they sleep with one eye open, not out of guilt, but anticipation. Because the scariest thing in the world isn't a monster roaring, it's a monster planning. And you're building a masterpiece of consequences. Every choice they made, every word they said, every glance, every laugh, every whisper behind your back. You didn't forget. You cataloged it. You stored it like data in a vault made of fire. And now you're using it. Not recklessly, strategically, patiently, like poison in a king's wine. Slow, sweet, inevitable. They don't know how it'll happen, when it'll happen, but they know it's coming. That's the brilliance of your vengeance. It's not loud. It's not fast. It's not even labeled. It's just there, looming, breathing, smiling with its teeth hidden behind velvet gloves. And when it strikes, it won't be with chaos. It'll be with clarity. The same clarity the mind reader begged for as he spiraled inside your thoughts. Because clarity, when unprepared, doesn't heal. It shatters. He never returned whole. They sent him in to diagnose you, map your madness, measure your intent. And what came back was a shell wearing fear like a second skin. But it wasn't what he saw that broke him. It was what he felt. That overwhelming absence of regret. That flawless void where guilt should have lived. You didn't just move on from the damage. You studied it, mastered it, built a kingdom from it. And now, he wasn't the only one staring at the architecture of your vengeance. No, now they all see it. Towering, majestic, unstoppable. You don't chase them. You don't even speak their names. And that's what tightens the noose around their fragile egos. You've become a myth inside their own lives. Whispers behind boardroom doors. Cold silences in once familiar group chats. Nervous eyes scanning empty corners. You haunt them, not with presence, but with progress. The kind of terrifying, unapologetic ascension they convinced themselves you were incapable of. Every step you take now writes scripture in the soil they thought you'd be buried in. They keep checking their reflections, not for vanity, for traces, for evidence that you were there. They look for fingerprints in their guilt, footprints in their shame, and echoes in every decision they now doubt. That's the poison you've become, subtle, invisible, and impossible to cleanse. You didn't fight them in the open because that would have been too merciful. You fought them in consequence. You let time rot their confidence, You let success speak in ways their pride can't argue with. And the beauty is, you never had to raise your voice. They screamed enough for both of you, in panic, in frustration, in meetings, in midnight anxiety attacks they lied about the next morning. You let the mirror do the work. You let their lies fold in on themselves like a dying star. What they feared most was never your wrath. It was your evolution, that you grew, not in spite of them, but because of them. You turned betrayal into blueprint. And now, you build legacies while they build excuses. The mind reader left behind more than fear. He left behind a warning, one they can't speak of publicly, one they scribbled on papers, encrypted in digital files, buried in layers of deniability. But the warning doesn't matter anymore. The infection already spread. Doubt has turned allies into observers, friends into statues. No one trusts anyone, because if you could hide that much, if you could become this beneath their noses, what else have they missed? You've dismantled their reality without even touching it. That's the kind of power they never saw coming. You didn't destroy their world. You made it irrelevant. You kept rising until their shadows couldn't reach you. And now they scream for your attention like abandoned gods, praying to be noticed by the very force they once tried to smother. But you don't answer. You don't need to. Your silence has become divine. Every day you don't respond is another sermon preached in the church of your aftermath. They wonder if you'll ever come back, as if this was a cycle, as if you were a phase. But you don't return to burned buildings. You don't revisit graves. You're not the ghost of what they did. You're the future of what they can't undo. They thought time would save them, that you'd cool down, that the storm would pass. But they forgot. Some storms don't move on. They take root. And now your roots are deep, deeper than their reach, deeper than their damage. They tried to control the narrative, reshape the past, alter the lens. But truth doesn't need cameras. It needs patience. And yours outlasted their performance. Now the curtain has dropped. And behind it, frauds, pretenders, puppets with strings tied to their own cowardice. They underestimated the endurance of someone who has already sat at rock bottom and memorized the floor plans. You became everything they said you couldn't be, and more. Not just success, sovereignty. You don't just survive, you reign. Not with applause, but with aftermath. You lead, not with validation, but with irrelevance. You let them become background noise in a song that no longer plays for them. And they can't stand that, because their favorite addiction was always your reaction. But now, you give them nothing, and nothing is excruciating. They send messages you don't open. They drop hints in conversations you've outgrown. They stage reconciliations like theater plays, hoping you'll buy a ticket to their guilt. But you've stopped attending shows. You don't participate in scripted apologies, in redemption arcs designed to comfort the villain. You don't need closure when your existence is the conclusion. The mind reader? He's a relic now, a reminder, a scar stitched across their psyche. Not because he failed, but because he confirmed what they feared most. You were never broken. You were becoming. And now that you've arrived, there's no negotiation, no compromise, no turning back. They call you heartless, as if you owe them softness after they fed on your empathy like vultures, as if compassion is a renewable resource they can exploit forever. But you didn't lose your heart. You just relocated it, far from their reach, far from their rot. And now that they can't access it, they call it cruelty. How convenient. But you've transcended that language. You're not here to prove them wrong anymore. You're here to prove you were never theirs to define. You don't walk in circles. You walk in patterns they can't follow. You build in realms they can't imagine. And every time they try to interpret your silence, they fail. Because you don't communicate in panic anymore. You communicate in outcomes. They sit in rooms they once filled with laughter at your expense, now echoing with the discomfort of their own irrelevance. They scroll through your progress like it's a horror story, each post, each step, each victory a page they can't unsee. And they wonder, constantly, hopelessly, how it all slipped through their fingers. But it didn't slip. You snatched it back, and you never needed to announce it. They felt it. They still do. And when they try to remember where it all changed, they'll look back at that one moment, the day they sent someone into your mind, thinking they could uncover the blueprint to manipulate you. But what they discovered wasn't data. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't pain. It was you, unfiltered, unashamed, and unkillable. And that, my dear, was the day everything began to die.